Hi, I'm Joanna of Custom Quilts, and today I'm going to show you how to quilt up a block on the Janome Rainbow Block of the Month. And we're going to be using the Janome Quiltmaker Pro 20-inch long arm. So if you'll grab a couple of marking utensils and some long arm quilting rulers, let's get started. All right, so we're going to be starting out with this block from the Janome Rainbow Block of the Month. And I've already tested my tension and made sure that everything looks nice and neat. You can notice that I have gone ahead and I've marked some of my ruler lines on this block just for ease of use while I'm doing the video so that I'm not taking a lot of time on marking angles and things like that. And I just use the Janome ditch ruler to do that. Really quick and easy. What I did was I measured and marked the centers of my triangles, and then I portioned off some lines so that I can do some easy ruler work here in just a moment. So the first thing we're going to do is start with stabilizing the block by stitching in the ditch around the sashing and the edge of the block. After that, I'm going to come in and do some ruler work on the colored portions of the block. And once that's completed, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to be quilting these nice smoky swirls that you've got over here. As you can see on this block, I'm going to be quilting those in the background and the gray fabric. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started. All right, now we are off to the races. So I'm going to go ahead and on my Janome Quiltmaker Pro 20, I'm going to do needle up, needle down to secure my threads. And I can come back later and bury these if I want to, or I can stitch in place a few times to secure my thread. It's really personal preference on what you want to do here. A lot of times I'll bury my threads just so I know they're nice and secure and not going to, rear their ugly heads at me later. Okay, so I'm going to start by stabilizing this block, and I'm doing that by stitching in the ditch all the way around the perimeter. It's a good idea to go nice and slow on this part. If you rush, it can tend to look a little bit sloppy, so it's always better to take your time. And you can see I have a basting stitch here that I didn't take out. I'm gonna leave that just because this is the outer edge of the quilt and I haven't quilted anything on that yet. And I'm only gonna be stitching over that in two really small places, so it should be super easy to remove later after the fact. Normally, I would go ahead and make sure that I have all my basting stitches out prior to quilting. Okay, now you can see that I just I backtracked over a portion I had already quilted on. If I would have been really smart and planned a little bit better, I would have started stitching in the ditch here. That way I would end there, coming back around my perimeter, because I need to start quilting around these before I do my ruler work because I'm stabilizing these portions again. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and stitch in the ditch around this pink section. And I'm going to position my ruler so that it's offset about 1/4 of an inch from my mark that I made of where I want my needle to end up, because my quilting foot is 1/4 of an inch from my needle position. So that's where I need to be measuring if I want my needle to end up here, and I'm using a ruler. Okay, so I did my little piece of ruler work right here. Now I'm going to go in and I'm going to fill this with some free motion. All right, so we did some nice even loops. I'm going to go ahead and quilt the next portion. So here I'm laying the foundation of doing the little bit of ruler work, and then I'm going to go back in and fill this section with pebbles. And you could easily pick, a different motif to do here. I just like to do pebbles in these little sections because I think they look cool. Some people don't like to do designs that are this small. It's just personal preference and whatever you're most comfortable doing. You could even just leave this blank and just leave the ruler work to shine on its own. Okay, now we're going to move on to the next part. Okay, we're going to stitch in the ditch around this portion. You can see I didn't quite have my ruler lined up, and you can see my stitch line. So I really want to do a better job of taking my time and making sure that I land in that ditch. Okay, now I'm going to go ahead and do my ruler work here. And then now I'm going to do my nice little swirly free motion inside this. Really, these are more like loops. I don't think those are swirls. Okay, we're going to go ahead and we're going to repeat this all the way around the block. So on this one, I'm going to be doing the little bit of ruler work and then the pebble fill inside that. Okay. And on this smaller portion, I'm really doing kind of a partial pebble to begin with, because it's a really tiny space to fill. Until we get going. There we go. Then we're going to make our way to this next block and we're going to do the ruler work and then the loops. Okay, so we're gonna go around and we're gonna repeat that on these outside blocks. Stitching in the ditch, and then doing the ruler work, and then the free motion fill inside. Okay, and now I'm gonna do my free motion fill. And I'm actually going to come in the center and do these hot pink ones because I haven't done any of those yet. So I'm going to go ahead and outline these. And before I finish this outline right here, I'm going to go ahead and do my inside ruler work, because if I go up, then I'm going to have to backtrack and stitch back down this, and I don't like to backtrack if I don't have to in a quilt. And on these blocks, I'm just doing simple ruler work, no free motion inside. So these will go really fast. So remember, like I said before, I'm making my ruler offset about 1/4 of an inch from where I want my needle to end up. So I'm not lining up my ruler with this intersection. I'm offsetting it about 1/4 of an inch over here. So that way my ruler foot will be guided against it and my needle will end up in the exact right position. Perfect. Okay, and now I'm going to finish up that quilting on this triangle that I quilted to begin with, and that will put me back in the spot that I need to be to continue quilting. And now I don't have a ton of backtracking because I kind of planned out where I was going and things like that. So that worked out really well. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and finish stitching in the ditch on this guy up here. Okay. Do our ruler work. And then this little small triangle is the one that we do the pebbles on inside the fill. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. And it's important whenever you're doing this to always be aware of your boundaries. So my boundaries are the upper and lower quilting lines, the ruler work that I just quilted. So this is one of my boundaries, and then this is one of my boundaries. So I'm always kind of watching that whenever I am filling those in with pebbles to make sure I'm not going over that boundary line. Okay. We're almost done with the colorful portions of this block, and then we'll start our free motion on the background, which is one of my favorite things to do. So much fun. So we're going to do our free motion loops. And I always try to make one of the loops end up in the center of that little boomerang that I've quilted. It doesn't always happen, but if you kind of look ahead of where you're quilting, you can kind of make it fall pretty nicely. Okay. Finish up our ditch work by trying to stay in the ditch. There we go. And this is our last colorful triangle to quilt up. We're almost home free. So we're going to do our little pebble fill here. Nice and neat. So you can see how I'm watching those boundary lines and making sure that I just touch them without going over. I also don't want to undershoot and end up way far away from it. Boom, done. Okay, so now we're done with all of the ruler work and the colorful portions of the block. Now I'm gonna go back and I'm gonna fill in these areas with free motion swirls. Some of these areas can be a little bit tricky, especially because they are kind of smaller shapes. They're triangles, and this shape is easier to quilt in big, wide open areas. Sometimes you just have to kind of taper it or echo around a couple of times until the space that you have is quilted and filled up. So right now I'm just kind of echoing the shape rather than starting a ton of new swirls. And it still looks great, right? It's still free motion quilting, still fills the space that we need. And I'm going to echo my way out of this also. There we go, nice. Some more echoes. Echoes are our friends here. finish off this little section right here. And then we've got one more little triangle right here to quilt, and we're done with this block. And that is it, my friend. We are done. So I'm going to go ahead and pull up my top and bobbin thread so that I know I have enough to tie off later. Give a little excess there. A little more. It's always better to have more than enough than not enough, right? Okay. Oh, this looks really good. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and move this out of the way and we can take a look at our finished block. Oh, that turned out really nice. I love how the ruler work turned out. Really subtle with that gray colored thread that we picked. And our little loops turned out good. And then our little pebbles. And then our smoky swirls in the background goes along really nicely with the other blocks that we've done. So we are done and ready to start a new block.